Welcome back, everybody, to the third installment of the Parental Gamers Podcast. Growing up is optional. Today, you will be listening to me, Dad Bods United, and the incredible I Am Andy TTV, talking about all things old school, all the things that shaped and molded us into the man boys we are today, whether it was shows, video games, TV, movies. This is going to be a, can we call it romantic? No, maybe not romantic. A lovely trip down memory lane, a stroll.
Rumstalgic?
Rumstalgic. How about a man-stalgic? Can we do man? No, that's kind of sexist. Um, We
It's
should.
gonna be something.
It's going to be something, that's for sure. So, Andy, I am Andy TTV. Tell us about who you are for those that are joining us for the first time ever.
Oh, I'm Andy, TTV. I stream here on Twitch. I try and branch out on YouTube, do some things. That hasn't been going very well. I am a father to a 1-year-old who is very hard to let go to daycare. I put her in daycare on Monday. It's her third week in daycare. Cried like a baby.
You or her?
Third week. Me? 3 weeks she's been there. My mic is a bit low. That's a DB problem.
Yeah, I fixed it already. I just didn't want to hear his face.
Okay. Wow. I play lots of BRs. I do lots of editing. I do lots of image manipulation for other content creators. I'm just a helpful individual that likes to try and put my best foot forward in the freest possible way, which is free.
The freest way possible. I like that.
Yeah.
That. It's like a charitable.
It's been pretty much. It's very rare that I charge people for the type of work that I do. By rare, I mean like very 1 out of 100 times. I'm gonna charge people. I started charging people when I was on Mixer, just because it was getting it was kind of a revolving door of people coming through, and my time was worthwhile. But now I have time, so I'm gonna do it.
I still get a bill in the mail every single time.
Not from me, sir.
All right, fair play. So it's been a bit of a challenge since we last spoke with, because for last time we spoke, your daughter was just starting daycare. Like, how's
3 weeks ago?
Like, because
she. Oh, I mean it's
now, and it's crazy, and it's but I love them.
It frees up. Obviously, it frees up the day, right? I put her into we put her into daycare at 7:30. We pick her up at 3. She cries some days she doesn't. Mondays she cries. So Monday we both cried, but I cried for longer because there was no toys to play with so she got to stay at daycare and play with toys. It's weird having the time in the house. You're used to hearing the yells and the screaming of just children playing, and then you've got nothing. And I think that's what hits me. It's because I'll spend most of my day up here in the bedroom or in the office, and I'll edit videos, or I'll stream, or I'll watch streams, or I'll just be involved in whatever it is I'm doing, and I'll get to hear her downstairs doing her thing, and I'll go down, I'll give her cuddles, and I'll do all the thing. But then it's just not there one day, and it just hits you. I was like, oh no, I have to hold her today until after daycare. So the adjustment is just getting used to the fact that that's part of the routine now.
Right. Just right in the feels, man. Who cry? Yeah, I know. That's tough, man. Like, for us, it's the opposite now, because I'm going back to the office a couple days a week, most days now, and because of the my health situation and my youngest daughter being asthmatic, we don't send my older one to school, so she's homeschooled right now, and she's doing the virtual learning, which has been an incredible toll on my wife. But the house is just chaos. You can hear my daughter and all her classmates and her teacher, the 6-year-old, with the school shit on the laptop in the main living room. My wife trying to help her. My 2-year-old is downstairs and just flipping over whatever corner of the basement she can find. And it's just, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's a constant rotation of cleanup. And it's fuck. The house is never clean. It doesn't matter how many. Like my wife is chasing my little one around, picking shit up. I come home from work. I come to the basement to get changed. I'm stepping on Legos and Shopkins and like Barbies, and it's like, oh guys, I'm just gonna come in with a shovel and a garbage bag one day, like everything, kids and toys, everything out.
My daughter actually does this really cool thing. Um, there's this one cupboard in the kitchen on the island, and it's full of just random stuff, right? Like shampoo bottles and lotions. It's just like it's like an extra cupboard of stuff. She'll actually go into it. She'll pull it all out, and she'll put it in the front foyer, and then she'll go one by one and put it all in the front foyer. And then once it's all out, she'll go back and she'll pick it all up and put it back in the cupboard.
At least she
So
puts
it's
stuff away.
exactly. She's. I'm hoping that she stays good. I doubt it. She's my kid. It's probably gonna be a mess at any time. But um, yeah, no, it's fun to watch her because you just sit on the stairs and watch her go back and forward, and you know she's not going to get herself into any like harm
Yeah.
because she's literally just going from A to B.
My little one, my 2-year-old likes to hide all of her stuff. So I went to go put her peaches on tonight. I'll go into her pajama drawer and there's like 2 stuffed animals sleeping in her pajama drawer. It's like, what? Why? It's like, Papa, they're sleeping. Or like my wife, because it's challenging throughout the day, will let her have her soother, and I hate at 2 years old that she still has her soother. She's almost 3. Like during the day, I
Yeah.
don't want her to have it. It's my thing. It's not each parent to their own.
I get it. I get it.
But I'm like, no, during the day when she's sleeping, fine. But during the day, no. So when I come home, usually she'll be on the couch and she'll be sitting there with the chooch in her mouth and her bunny playing with her little toy or little stuffed animal, just chilling, watching whatever. As soon as she hears the door open and she sees me, she rips the chooch out of her mouth. She jams her hand into the pillows and she just sits there and she's like, hi, Papa. My chooch is not here. I'm like, you little shit. I know what you got there. And then as I go in to say hi to my 6-year-old and my wife, my 2-year-old disappears up to her bedroom, puts her shit away, and comes back. It's like, oh, fuck. Honestly, they're conniving. They're smart, but they're too smart, man.
Oh, absolutely. Mine's got a thing for her bottles right now.
Oh, really?
We weaned off the bottle. Yeah, it's like there's a 9-month-old at daycare, and every time they give the bottle to the 9-month-old, she cries because she wants a bottle. So the kid gets fed 3 times a day by bottle. My daughter is crying at least 3 times a day. We only give her a bottle at nap time so she can fall asleep easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's a big pain in the butt.
It's true, man. They are incredibly smart. But I digress, man. What have you been up to? What's your gaming life been like the last 3 weeks?
PUBG actually. Dropping back into some. So I mean, speaking of retro and going back, not growing up, we started playing in 2017. It's actually what got me started streaming, playing PUBG. And we dropped back into it. Yeah, it's the first. I mean, I just one of my friends started streaming, and then he's like, "You should give it a shot." Went online, and we were just streaming PUBG all the time. And then we found other people in the community that were playing it, and we started playing with them. And we didn't really touch it. We went to Black Ops, and then we did Warzone a little bit, and never really touched Fortnite. But then Apex came out, and we were playing that basically ever since. And then PUBG just kind of came back in the rotation. It's been tons of fun. Played some Apex today. I mean, for consoles, whatever. It's still broken. Like it's still Play-Doh, and it's still if you have the Xbox One X, you get faster loading times, but it's still a broken game. I crashed like at least 3 times a session, so
Really?
it just it's. I still believe they should have made that game from scratch for the Xbox or for the consoles, and not ported it over. It was just it is broken, but so much fun. And yes, it's better, but it's not. It's lackluster. Esports ready.
Right. Like I remember the hype when it was launching for X. Like I paid the $30. I have it. I own it. I played it the first day, and I've never been back. I've just never been back. Like it doesn't grab me in the feels for BRs anyway. It just doesn't doesn't get me going. It's pretty cool. I like the concept, and I think it was like, for me, it felt like the first true battle royale. Like before the war zones, before like even Apex, like it just felt like it was one of the originators.
was supposed to be one that was before that. I can't remember the name. Like I don't know. There was like another battle royale that everything was based off of. It was like H1N1 or so. I don't know. That's like a flu. I'm not really sure is, but it was something like that.
Right, though.
And yeah, and I think that kind of started things going. And then the Night and PUBG and or I think PUBG then Fortnite and blah 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 blah. But Fortnite definitely won that battle.
Yeah. By a
Damn.
landslide.
But I mean, PUBG 2017 is 2020. They're still rolling. They're still a player base. They might have added bots, but they're still a player base. People are still playing it.
Yeah.
People on Twitch are still playing it. Some big names are still playing that game. So
To be fair, they added bots to Fortnite, so I mean, bots doesn't seem like a major indication of whether a game is dying out. You know what I mean?
True.
So, very cool. Very cool.
What about yourself? What's DB up to?
I've been ankles deep in FIFA. FIFA launched, full launch was about 2 weeks ago. 2, 3, and I got in on pre-release. Actually, it was like the day after, the week after, or a couple days after the last podcast, we talked about loot crates and loot boxes on our last episode, and it was like, wow. Yeah, it's probably even more pay to win than previous versions this year.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay did change more than I thought it would have, given the pandemic and, you know, a lot of these publishers working from home and developers and stuff like that. But it is a lot better gameplay wise in a lot of respects. And as I'm saying this, I know that those of you listening live are here because Weekend League has been disrupted because EA servers have been up and down all day today. So it is a better game. The server issues are still server issues. The pay to win is still just as egregious as always. But I've been pretty deep into FIFA, grinding that, grinding on my team, trying to get better players and stuff like that. Dabbling in a little bit of NHL 2001, which is a ton of fun. A little bit of COD, and I'm starting to roll myself back into Ghost of Tsushima, which is a single-player PS4 game set in Samurai vs. Mongolian era, which is stunning. But yeah, it's been a pretty straightforward week. It's pretty much been like all FIFA. It's been pretty FIFA heavy, not gonna lie.
Nice. I was gonna say something about the Canada. There's a class action suit coming up in Canada.
Yeah, that's the European carrying over from. There's a bunch of them that have taken place in Europe. There's a class action lawsuit against EA, basically for anybody who's spent money on in-game purchases, calling it just egregious, like an egregious gambling scheme targeting underage children and users in general.
Yeah, and it's going back like to 2002 or something. If you spent money on these things over a certain period of time,
we'll have to fact check it, but I believe it's 2012 when Ultimate Team started. We'll have to double check the fact on that. You could be absolutely right, but I think Ultimate Team started around 2012. But yeah, no. If this is so, they've tried similar class actions in North America, and they've all kind of failed. I think the first one was done in California. They've had some success in Europe, with Belgium being the first country to ban loot boxes and these surprise mechanics. Okay. Somebody in the chat said 2014 was the first year of Ultimate Team.
The patch note explains that this class action, everyone in Canada who has bought loot boxes from EA since 2008 is covered by the suit.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, comes with a list of over 60 titles, including EA support franchises Mass Effect, Need for Speed, Battlefield, Apex Legends, and more. So it's all consuming from 2008.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for the check, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
That makes perfect sense. Because that would have covered a lot more games than just the FIFA and Madden franchises and stuff like that. So it's huge. It's a big one for North America. I think it's got to be one of the first of its kind in Canada. I know there's, like I said, there's some states that have tried similar class actions, but I don't believe anywhere in NA has had any success. So I'm very curious to see the outcome of how that all plays out. because it could be huge changes to the way games are developed and produced. Um, to lose one country in Europe is not so bad, but if you have to eliminate the sale of loot boxes in those franchises, that could be like $1 billion losses. They will have a lot of incentive to fight that battle.
Absolutely. And especially with the NHL, like that, especially for this country, NHL, if they lose that, I mean, people are still going to play it, but if the game's banned because their EA refuses to take it out,
So what they'll
which they won't, they're not going to refuse to take it out. They'll just change it up. They'll make it legal, but it's just going to be they're going to feel it. They're definitely going to feel it.
Well, like you look at what they've done in Belgium, they've just basically removed packs from the store. So now you can only grind and earn them or buy them with in-game currency. What that's done is created a huge void, and they've allowed for businesses to come in and basically sell coins and violate terms of service that way. So a lot of people are risking bans to try to buy coins because they can't buy packs with real money. They can only buy packs with in-game money. So they go buy coins with real money, get them transferred to their account in, illegal ways. And it opens up a whole other can of worms, and I'm sure we'll have more coverage of this in future episodes. We'll definitely keep an eye on the story. This will probably take years to resolve, get put off forever. It's just very, very interesting that something pops up in North America like that. I'm surprised. But we'll see. It should be interesting.
Yeah.
So,
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
So, before we get down to business about what we're doing, Canadian Thanksgiving was probably about 3 weeks ago. I think we did the podcast, and it was like that following Monday was actually Thanksgiving. What's a Thanksgiving in the GBU household? What's an Italian Thanksgiving like? An Italian Canadian Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's pretty much just a bigger meal than normal meals. We did 2 of them because of the whole social distancing thing. We did couple of outdoor Thanksgivings. Because of COVID regulations, we went to my sister-in-law's house because my wife's family is bigger than 10 people. We did it outside. They do more of breakfast because nobody really likes turkey. So they do like a big pineapple and ham with pancakes, scrambled eggs, waffles, like all the breakfast. Like it's just bacon and hash browns and just a massive 10-foot table of all the breakfast foods you can imagine. And that was pretty much that. And then my parents' house the next day, they're a little bit more traditional in it. They try to do it with just like the turkey. They'll still cook a ham because I hate turkey with a passion. So they do a ham for me. And we do barbecue. Like we'll barbecue a bunch of different stuff, man.
Okay.
How about you? What was Thanksgiving like in the TTV household?
Turkey, stuffing, all the usual stuffs. Very traditional in that sense. Smaller this year. Going on. It is, I don't know, smaller, intimate, not so bad.
Yeah.
It's
like when you guys do yours, do you guys do like any like crazy meals or any food that you kind of look at traditionally and you're like, oh yeah, this is a staple in my house, no matter how big or small?
Stuffing, I think, is just the always the go-to. But it's always turkey and stuffing. It's Christmas. Christmas will add a ham, but it's always turkey and stuffing. Something that we didn't do this year that we did the years previous is because we weren't able to gather in a bigger. There's something called it's called risalamande. It's basically rice pudding, and we just didn't have that because typically we serve it to everybody, and whoever finds it gets a prize. So it's like a little game.
Nice.
But not enough people this year to make it happen.
Yeah, it's no fun if you eat the whole rice pudding and you're the one who finds it.
Trust me. One of those Christmases I had like 2 servings of like a full meal turkey and all the stuff, and then I had because then what we do break and then come back like 20 minutes later and have open face sandwiches with turkey and all and we do that. So I had 7 open face turkey sandwiches and then we do Rieselemang. So I had like 5 bowls of Rieselemang, and then there's coffee and cookies and stuff. And that was before I put all this weight on. Christmases are like no joke when it comes to food.
Wow. Dude,
Yeah.
my stomach.
I can't eat like that anymore. I fall asleep nowadays if I eat that much. Because I had like a burger and fries for dinner, and I fell asleep for 45 minutes afterwards. So,
And I hit the couch too. I came home from work, played a pasta, and I was like on the couch. Kids wrapped up. And just, I'm getting old, man. I'm old and tired. What can I tell you?
absolutely.
On that note, though,
I agree.
on the note of being old, today we're gonna talk about some fun stuff, some stuff that kind of molded us, some stuff that some of you might not even know about or remember, depending on your age category. If you're in here and you've hung out, you know what I'm all about, and you know how old I am and when I grew up. I'm an early '80s kid. Andy, you're the late '80s, right?
Yep, late 80s,
So we
borderline
kind of-
90s.
we've got some crossover in the stuff that we watched, but not as much as I think we thought we did. So it'll be interesting to talk about some of the shows and stuff that we both kind of got attached to. Some of the shows that it may explain more about who we are, for the good or bad. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about. I don't know. I think a good place to kick it off would be TV. What do you think?
Sure, let's get it.
So let's see. When you think back, what is the first TV show that you get all the feels for? That you're like, oh my god, this is the one.
That's hard to answer that one.
Oh, it's not just bang right now.
I don't know. The first thing that pops to mind when I think of TV shows I grew up with. So I am going into your world, Batman series. Like I go. That's just where my brain goes to. I think of like Clayface, and I think of like Penguin and the Joker, and how great that series was. Yeah, that's where I go to.
Dude, the animated series is one of the greatest television series of all times. If you don't know what it is, you have to get to know what it is. This right here, if for those of you that are visual listeners, I am holding up the box set right now for the audio listeners. Animated series was one of the best animated things ever, by far, bar none.
And I'm looking at a list here of like Warner Brothers animated television shows from like the 90s, and it only aired for 3 years.
Yep.
That's crazy. I feel like I watched that for like 20 years of my childhood. I'm 32 now,
So many episodes, man. So many.
And then, yeah, that was nuts.
I'm trying to see if I have an episode. No, it doesn't have me. It doesn't have an episode listed here. The one that I gravitate to right away is this right here for my visual listeners. For the audio listeners, G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe was like epic. It was just so epic.
That's how you know you're old.
Yeah, right? G.I. Joe, Transformers. There was something about...
I have a soft spot. I have a soft spot for Transformers, but I couldn't get into the original cartoon. It was just outside of my generation where I didn't enjoy that animation style.
Gotcha.
But like previous, like further on iterations, like Transformers Prime, that came out in like 2010ish. That was amazing. I love the animation. The storyline was great. I love when they touch on like slightly. I think that's probably why I like the animated series. It was like cartoon, but dark undertones. Cartoons made for older kids.
Like Beast Wars. Beast Wars Transformers was...
Beast Wars, yes. Which is funny you say that, because god dang, I didn't like the original Transformers, and the animation on the original Transformers is probably better than the animation on Beast Wars. Beast Wars looked like 3D stop motion. But I still enjoyed it.
That was like one of the greatest things ever. It was like the first outside of Reboot. That was like one of the first greatest freaking things.
Oh my god, Reboot.
Like
Man.
Models.
Reboot was the best. Reboot. I should have said Reboot.
We'll get to Reboot.
I should have said Reboot.
Transformers was like the original, especially the movie, when they did the full movie and Optimus Prime, spoiler alert, Optimus Prime dies in that movie. It is like, like tears and like, oh my God, it's Optimus. Apparently, I've read an article years ago that was one of the first times like a hero had actually died in a full length feature film. Like that was one of the first instances that they'd ever seen of a hero dying in a feature film. Be it a cartoon and whatnot, but it was still incredible.
Yeah.
Thundercats. Somebody in the chat just said Thundercats. Thundercats. Oh my god. Oh, Thundercats, like Masters of the Universe, He-Man, Shiva. Like those were the shows that.
Okay, I'm gonna say
sense.
this. Thundercats was outside of my age range, and I'm gonna fight myself on this one right afterwards. Thundercats, I couldn't get into it, didn't enjoy. He-Man, same idea, but still grew up watching Thunderbirds, which is basically just marionettes and like it's just puppet. Like,
And you're complaining about 3D stop motion Beast Wars that was like 3D animated. Like, get the frick out of here, man. Oh.
I'm literally going through a list that's on like fandom.com of all these things that I watched. Animaniacs, Batman, the Batman animated series, Batman Beyond, which was just after the animated series.
Yeah.
Daffy Duck Show, like Freakazoid, Give Me a Break, Pinky and the Brain. These were all the shows that like we still say some of this shit on a day-to-day basis. If you want to act like an idiot, then you're Pinky. Like it's Captain Planet. We talked about that on stream the other day.
Such a great.
I got made fun of.
It was amazing. My favorite were the moments, like the educational moments, because they had like shows in the 80s had to put in some sort of educational meaning or message in order to be classified as a children's show. So G.I. Joe had the classic, like learning is half the battle. G.I., you know what I mean? Before I get DMCA'd. But then like shows like Transformers and Thundercats were like, screw that shit. We're not putting it at the end of an episode. They would just flat out stop the episode dead. He-Man would just stop like mid epic fight scene in battle, and they're like, kids, don't do drugs, and then just keep going. It might as well have just been a voiceover. It was hilarious. Some of those captions on YouTube today are still some of the funniest. But they made no sense. They were just put in the most innocuous positions, man.
Some of the cartoons never really got. You guys remember like Rocco's Bizarre Adventures or like Felix the Cat?
Rocco's Modern Life, you mean?
Yeah, that's right. I think there was one.
There was dirty as hell. That was always on like after Ed the Sock in Canada.
Yeah, and then there's in that same line, Rocco's Modern Life always reminded me of like Ren and Stimpy.
Yep.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. And I shouldn't be on this website while we're doing this because it's just Earthworm Jim's on here. 2 seasons. That was also a video game that I played the hell out of. Too much. And I'm the Ninja Turtle guys. I didn't even start watching Ninja Turtles until I was like 10 years old.
So for the sake of the podcast, I actually went back and I pulled out again for the video listeners or viewers. I pulled out some of my original G.I. Joe action figures that I still had kicking around the house. Like I've kept these things with me. They're still like fully intact. Like the articulation in these things was insane. Like it was so amazing to see these G.I. Joes and like the epic battles that these guys have been through, and some of the shit that these guys have seen over the years is incredible. Like, look at the detail, man. These were toys. These right here. These. Again, for the videos, for those audio listeners, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to check out our YouTube or come by my Twitch because these, like, I had hundreds of these things. When I misbehaved as a kid, my dad used to take them outside with a hammer and smash them. Now, whew. But yeah, those were some of my favorite. One other one that people don't know a lot about, and I'm not sure if you would remember it because it might have been. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see here if I can figure out what year this aired. 1988. Cops.
Born. That was the year I was born.
Cops. For any old people in here that know Cops, wow, what a freaking series. Look at that cast. Look at that cast. Andy, if you can see it, guys like characters like Long Arm, And it was just literally cops and robbers. It was literally these cartoon cops that would go around and stop the cartoon robbers, and they all had like this special types of abilities. But none of them were superpowered. There was all just like these like crazy tech and gadgets. One of my favorite
real
shows of all
cops.
time. What's that?
The real cops.
Fighting crime in a future time. That line right there, guaranteed, hit some nostalgic feels for all of our listeners right now. Any male born in the early 80s,
I
knew that
had
show.
literally never heard of that show.
Oh, how are we even friends?
I thought we were just podcast buddies.
Yeah, you're right. We're just business partners. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chad, am I alone here? Like, for those of you here watching live on Twitch, am I the only one that knows about the show? Am I like? Did I grow up in a vortex?
Well, let's go through it. Some of them have mentioned that they were rewatching the Batman animated series, or they just rewatched it. Adventure Time is something I enjoyed. I wasn't growing up; I had already technically grown up when I watched that. Technically, I had 10 seasons. I don't know when it aired. 2007, so it's in the 2000s. So, but I would have watched it as well. It's pretty good, kind of up there with the regular show if anyone's watched that. Thundercats, like we talked.
I haven't watched any Adventure Time. I don't even know what that is.
No, it's actually it's whatever. I can't. It's weird. It's weird.
Is it like Rick and Morty weird?
No, no, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's kid weird, but it's like it's weird. Some of the things they do, it's like someone wrote it while they're on an acid trip or something. It's weird. Some of the visuals that it gives you are just it's absolutely messed up. But it's the one of the characters is the voice of Bender from Futurama, which is another classic.
Fantastic.
Futurama.
I didn't appreciate that show until well after it came off the air.
Yeah.
Like, while it was live, I was like, man, it's kind of another Simpsons. It's kind of weird. I don't like it. But like watching the episodes after it was done was like, wow, what a show! How did I miss this? But for me, like another for my household, like The Simpsons was a show that I always wanted to watch, but was never allowed to. My family was like, no Simpsons. My dad still to this day, I'll bust his chop. Like, I'm 36 years old. We'll go to his like my parents' place for dinner, and I'll put on an episode of The Simpsons just to see him rage. And it's like, why? Yeah. It's not that bad. Like, have you ever seen South Park? Get out of here. But he's just got this stigma attached to it, and he just hates it.
My parents banned us from me and my brother from Power Rangers and The Simpsons. There was a story that came out back in the day. I can't remember what year it was, but we were still in elementary school, and something came out that kids were more violent when they watched shows like Power Rangers, and technically The Simpsons was too old for us anyway. Like, that's definitely an adult cartoon, but kids always watched it. It is what it is. But we got banned from that for quite. I actually remember the scene that my parents watched. It was Homer and Marge in a bathtub together, and they were just kind of like struggling for position because Homer's like a big boy. So, and that's my parents saw that and said, that's not for kids. We can't have them watching this, and we weren't allowed to watch it anymore. The bans didn't last very long. We just kind of did what we wanted to, but we grew up with. The fact
that it was in place was enough.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to throw it back to my parents being of British lineage. Apparently, back in the day, the Ninja Turtles weren't the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They couldn't have that kind of ninja. It was it would say that it was too violent, or it would. So it was called the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Imagine growing up with the Hero Turtles and how lame that sounds.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked them either. Like, they're cool.
So I'm glad.
Hero Turtles, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm glad I grew up where I grew up to understand that they're ninjas. Please don't mess with that. My bread and butter. Dude, that's my baby.
Like, I know you're the super fan when it comes to Ninja Turtles, but they were legit. I still have. He's out of reach. I'll grab him after. I've got a 3-foot stuffed Raphael, from the original series from the 80s.
Yeah.
And I still have it with me today, tags and everything. That show was great, and it's still great now. Like, that show still holds up. Not one of the best things ever. Like, you look at a show like G.I. Joe or Transformers, Thundercats, none of those shows have held the test of time. Ninja Turtles still manages to kind of maintain itself, and it was written well enough that it can. The Batman animated series is another one that was able to achieve that same thing. Power Rangers, not so much. I just went back last year and I watched every single episode of every single season from season 1 to current present day season. And wow, was that ever a bad show.
There's
Oh, man.
back on Ninja Turtles, so it had a 9-year run date, so in 1987 to 1996 in the first animated series. But the farther you get along, like the first season was like rushed to production. There's an episode on Netflix, it's like The Toys That Made Us, I think it's called.
Yes.
And they go into Ninja Turtles is like the very, very first episode, and they go into like once they got this big company to sign off on, okay, we're going to make your toys, they wanted to get a TV show out there, so they rushed like 6 episodes to air in the first season just to get it out, and then it kept on going and going, and you can tell like they kind of got their feet under them like second, third, fourth season, and then it starts to die off again with some of the added on characters, some of the terrible storylines and the fillers. Like it definitely, it blew up as a massive thing, and then it pittered off, and we're still in that stage where Ninja Turtles has this like very fine fan base, and it's never growing. it's just even keeled. It's young enough where we all haven't died yet, and it's old enough where the young kids don't really care for it.
Yeah, I just don't think they've done enough with it. I think, like, to your point, it seemed like to be like a marketing strategy where it got so big, so fast. Like, how can we extract every penny from it? And I had no idea until I watched the Netflix documentary how many freaking characters they added to that universe, and how many toys and different characters that I don't even remember seeing in episodes that they added to that series. Like, it's insane. But
It's nuts.
like, most of it still holds up. Again, like the Batman animated series still holds up. A lot of these shows have fallen by the wayside, and a lot of kids won't remember. Like, even this guy, I pulled this guy out of the collection. I'm sure Andy will appreciate this one. A Street Shark.
Oh my God, I rewatched that like 6 years ago.
Like,
It's painful. It's painful to go back and watch that, because they were definitely trying to compete with that Ninja Turtle world. They were it was the same time frame, and they tried, and I think they failed in comparison. But it was still good. It's still funny, stupid. I definitely enjoyed it.
Oh, for sure.
Let's
For
see.
sure.
I was looking for something here.
The Toys That Made Us is so great. It was a great series, and it is really good. It's definitely worth a watch on Netflix for sure. But there's just so many good shows that like I grew up with, and I don't have that same attachment. Like, I still flip through like cartoons now, and they just don't have the same vibe. Like, even the next one I want to talk about is X-Men the animated series. Like, what a piece of artwork that was. Like, even that, I still have like my Psylocke action figure. I still have like my original Gambit action figure.
So I've never been a huge fan. Never been a huge fan of the X-Men.
Iceman, still in his original packaging. And it's just like, what do you mean not a fan of the X-Men?
I as far as the Marvel Universe goes, they've always been a miss for me. They just don't fit in so much. Like, they're just, I don't know, they're lackluster. Maybe it's because I grew up like, yeah, I watched the X-Men animated series, but it wasn't like there was much better things on TV at the time.
Like,
So I watched those
Spider-Man on the
things.
same rotating
Spider-Man animated series, absolutely. Amazing Spider-Man, rather. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
The Amazing Spider-Man was really good. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
The original Spider-Man was a bit rough, like the old like
Mm.
J. Jonah Jameson and like the 2D art and the pencil drawn with the same background just passing by Spider-Man. It was a good
Yes.
valiant effort for its time, but the Amazing Spider-Man touched on so many great stories, great villains. Like there are still episodes today that I can remember just off memory that still give me the feels. And just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so good.
I just watched the entire series on Disney Plus again.
Did you?
And yeah, I watched it. I've been like every night for the last however long it takes to watch an entire series. And it actually ends really quickly. He just gets thrown into this like big battle that the Beyonder and Madam Web, they throw him into this big test thing, and he like does this thing, the episode ends, and then that's it. There's no more. They ended up saying, let's go find such and such a person, and then you never know if they find that person. They're just
I wonder what
off. They're
happened.
gone. And then fast forward a few years later, they have Spider-Man Unlimited, which
Yep.
was like one season and absolute garbage. It's like Spider-Man in space.
They really
terrible.
They went super ambitious on that one.
Super terrible. But that's how they introduced Venom a little bit better. Like,
Yeah.
but then you go fast forward to like Ultimate Spider-Man, which is kind of newer, like 2007, and it's got great storylines, a bit more on the cartoony side. But they play with like how Venom was created and where it came from, and I know everybody takes creative freedoms, but it's still very well done. I laughed my ass off the other night watching an episode where Spider-Man and Wolverine get their minds switched, so they're in each other's bodies and they don't know what to do. So you just get like these silly parts where Wolverine's trying to web around like Spider-Man,
Right.
but he's just like a pendulum going back and forward. I was laughing my ass off at the thought of if this actually happened in a movie.
Honestly, the Spider-Man writers have always been good. I still like to this day remember the animated series, the Amazing Spider-Man animated series. That's the episode with Clayface. The episode with Clayface was always one of those ones that just stuck out so hard for me. I don't know what it was. But
Wait, did you say Spider-Man the animated series and then mention Clayface?
Sorry, I meant Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man animated series, and then Clayface.
Okay, still you're doing it again. Please. How are you gonna say you're DC fan if you're saying Spider-Man and Clayface are in the same universe?
Oh no, Batman and Clayface.
It was
Sandman and Spider-Man. The Clayface Batman animated series was the shit. That was the episode. Shut up, Eddie.
Oh my god. Oh, it's so embarrassing. You're embarrassing me.
Whatever. I'm still cooler than you. But those were great. But then you get into the live stuff that I fell in love with too. Like we talked about Power Rangers. There were shows like Beetleborg, which was another kind of like robotic take on the Power Rangers, which is kind of cool. You had like there was a show that apparently not too many people know about called Odyssey that had like a young Ryan Reynolds in it. That was about a kid that was bullied. That was actually standing up for his friend that was being bullied that ends up in a coma. And the whole story takes place in his imagination. And it's him trying to get through this world that he's created in his mind that's very like Lord of the Flies, where the kids have taken over. And he's trying to work his way through this, navigate his way through the politics of this child-run world to get back to like real life, which is super cool, super awesome. Doesn't really hold up now, but it was amazing in its day.
Yeah. We've only really touched on like the cartoons we watch, but you're talking about like real life stuff, like you said. The Ninja Turtles had their attempt at like a Power Rangers-esque real live one. I have no idea how long it lasted. Was not a fan. Wish they would just burn that script and never have ever tried. It's just ridiculous. We won't even talk about it. It was that bad. But then,
well, you brought it up.
Away from
into history. So sorry.
Away from superheroes and all that kind of stuff, there was like Ernest. Remember Ernest?
Yeah, Yeah.
Ernest goes to whatever, Ernest does this, or Ernest Halloween. I was talking to
Goes to
Vern.
jail, whatever.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Grew up with that. You mentioned Ryan Reynolds. I'll bring up two parts. I watched the hell out of a show called Two Guys, a Girl in a Pizza Place, which I think was like late '90s, early 2000s, which I thought was funny. It worked it made me happy. But just because we mentioned Ryan Reynolds, happens to have been his birthday today.
Nice. Happy birthday, Ryan
On
Reynolds.
the top of him, right?
Because-
Canadian boy.
I'm sure he's listening. Happy birthday, Ryan Reynolds.
Happy birthday, Ryan. Call me sometime.
Somebody mentioned earlier Saved by the Bell.
Ah.
Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell was one of the great. I still watch episodes of Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell or Boy Meets World? What do you want? What's better?
Oh, different strokes for different folks. That's a tough one because very different dynamics. Like Boy Meets World had that family like upbringing, raising, and like the kid went through the same kind of trials and tribulations and got in trouble for the same dumb shit you either did or thought about doing but never really did because you saw what happened to Corey. Whereas Saved by the Bell was more about like the antics of just being like a high school kid, you know what I mean? And like hanging out with friends and being somewhat popular, which I didn't really, have the luxury of being, but it was fun to kind of watch and enjoy. Like Saved by the Bell was the show that like when I was growing up, especially in like grade 8 and like early days of like high school, my alarm clock was a television that I had in my room and it would turn on at a certain time every morning and it would turn on to either Sports Center or Saved by the Bell every morning. Yeah, and then somebody in chat just mentioned that my wife and I watched the series recently. They just rebooted Boy Meets World, but as a Girl Meets World, and it's Corey and Topanga's kids, and they're raising, and it's Corey's daughter in high school or middle school, and you're seeing a lot of the old throwback characters, like Sean makes appearances, Mr. Fiend makes appearances. Like it's just such a brilliant. It was really good, man.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Oh, we got Boy Meets World in the chat over Saved by the Bell. I like it.
There was another one. I can't remember the name of it. It was like two like kind of like off kilter nerdy scientist types in high school who had made themselves like a robotic girlfriend, but it was like science? A cyber girlfriend. Weird Science, yeah.
Science.
That was.
Dude, just reminded me of that show.
That was great.
I
love that.
That show was so good, but again, that was kind of like
the next generation up. I wouldn't necessarily be a kids show. It was maybe like a late teens, but it was still something I watched anyway. It was good. Had a great jingle, like a great theme song.
Yeah, it did. It had she was beautiful too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and then on the topic of science, Bill Nye. You can't. I grew up. That was like every Thursday science class in elementary school growing up, and then a little bit in high school as well. Timeless.
Again, a show that just doesn't really hold up. His new stuff is pretty good. His new stuff.
It's like he grew up with his content though. Like he's not catering this stuff to the kids now. He's like, okay, your kids are now adults and it's time to do something. Like he's very to the point in his new stuff. He's still zany and he's still Bill Nye, but he's got a point and he wants to make it. He's very
it's almost too
in your face with stuff now. Yeah. It's still hokey. Like he sends people off to do interviews and stuff around the world and they're like D-list comedians on his Netflix one. So it's not the best like production value, but just like his passion always comes through in the projects that he does.
Right.
There's was on Netflix or was it on YouTube? I watched it where he challenges the Creationist Museum. He actually goes into this place and he has a debate with the Creationist museum head, and they battle back and forth about science versus creationism, and it's super interesting. It's not a conversation I want to get involved here, but he's went into the heart of Bible country and he's having a conversation with the Creationist Museum, and he's saying this is what the truth is, and he's trying to get people to. But it's interesting and it's heated and it's not heated in the same sense. It's just like it's two scientists having a debate. It's kind of what you want to see. It's lots of fun. I recommend going to see it. Try and find it. It's just like Bill Nye debate creationism, and it's good stuff.
There were so many. Like there's Like that was cool from like the educational standpoint. When you look at like Saved by the Bell, then you had like Sister, you had like Moesha, you had Fresh Prince,
Oh Jesus!
Tales
Yeah.
of the Crypt, Goosebumps.
Tales of the Crypt scared the shit out of me. Couldn't watch it. Goosebumps.
Half the Goosebumps
Couldn't
shows scared me
sometimes.
too.
Mhm. Uh,
There was another one, Teen Angel, that was like really kind of a little more.
yes, that's actually. I was trying to find that in my head. I was on the tip of my tongue. That was interesting. I don't remember much of the episodes, but I remember the title. I remember watching it.
Now, have you ever gone back to watch some of these, like, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Ghost Rider?
No.
Like, you ever
No.
thought about, like, if you've ever gone back to watch some of these, the thing that I find most interesting is the number of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is the number of episodes and the number of topics that seem to be difficult to bridge now. And I think that's why, like, modern day TV shows
Yeah.
really struggle. Like Third Rock from the Sun, some of the shit that they talked about was like nuts. And you look at it and it's like, man, could you cover some of these topics now? And whether it's gaming or movies or TV or music, like they talked about some heavy stuff that seems to be lacking in today's television and movies. And
Yeah. They didn't have. I mean, I guess for good and bad. Like if you remember some of the shittier cartoons, like you think about like Felix the Cat. That was something. Like if you go back and you see some of the cartoons that we watched, we grew up. Felix the Cat is the only one that I remember ever having a blackface character. Like that, like it was old enough where that was still an acceptable thing to do. Like that's never gonna, like that'll never happen again. That's just not gonna happen.
And it might not even been that it was acceptable. Like it might have very well been not acceptable then, but it was one of those things that was like, it's a TV show, whatever. Where like that kind of nonchalant attitude in a lot of respects wouldn't fly today. It's crazy. Like even like the topics of conversation and the way characters are treated, it's wild. But like you look at something like a South Park and its popularity back then, and that was groundbreaking back then, and it's still causing controversy today. But like a Rocko's Modern Life would never get airtime today.
They did an episode or a small series on Netflix. They brought it back a little bit.
Really?
Like they,
I gotta
yeah,
see
but it
this.
wasn't like they brought it back. They just did something with it. I know they're bringing back Animaniacs. They're doing something new with
I've
that,
heard of that, yeah.
and that's been a hard 21 years since that was on TV.
Fuck, I
And
feel
some of
so
the
old right now.
dude, some of the stuff that some of the best things, like there's always this one thing that always comes up on like Reddit and stuff like that. It's like Yakko and Jack, they're talking to their sister Dot, and Dot said it was something about fingerprints, and Dot's like, no, I'm not doing that, and she's holding like the artist formerly known as Prince in his hands. It's like that's a joke that's completely lost on the generation that it's actually meant for.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious now. It's like, ew, no, I'm not gonna fingerprints. It's just
subliminal
I can't wait for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, man, the subliminal messaging now that goes on in cartoons, and even back then more so, because you're right. If you look back at a lot of the shows that we kind of grew up enjoying and watching, there was a lot more of that than I think we really realize.
Yeah.
But it's not like, I think it's fair to say that we were pretty much like grew up on the idea of like the heroes shows and stuff like that. Like I caught a little bit of the tail end of like Recess, Rugrats, some of that stuff.
Recess.
And those were good, cool shows. But it sounds like we shared a lot of similarities. I think generationally, some of the smaller, lesser known shows, like I mentioned, Beetleborgs or shoot, what is the name of that show we talked about a little while ago? Like Beetleborgs and Odyssey would be ones that might have been like niche to my generation. And I'm sure there's a couple shows in your library that are very similar to that kind of were popular for your age group at a certain time that I would have just glossed right over. And then we haven't even covered like the Pokemons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I just looked at that. 1999 was the first time that aired, so that fits in. 1999. It says 99 to 2006, but it's still like technically ongoing. I like maybe not brand new stuff, but I can't imagine it. I thought it would have aired longer than 7 years.
Dude, have you ever gone back and tried to watch an episode of the Smurfs?
No, I watched the movies and that shit kills me.
Yeah, don't even bother. But on that, like I said, I think we're kind of on the same tone. And I honestly, chat, do me a favor. Hit us up on Twitter if you've gone back and watched any of these shows, or after this podcast decided to go back and catch any of them. And please let me know if your imagination still holds true to what these shows are. So like that memory that you had, like the memory I have of G.I. Joe, and the memory that I have, like that memory's been destroyed after watching it again now. So hit us up, hashtag PG Podcast. PG Podcast, hashtag PG Podcast. Go there, check it out. Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if any of these shows rang a bell, what your thoughts are of those shows, and if you go back and watch those shows, what you think of them now. I'm so curious. We'll be doing some of that as well. Andy and I will be going through, and I'll be dropping some tweets about some of our favorites over the next little while.
Absolutely. We touched on movies a little bit. We don't have to spend too much time. Movies are like, that's kind of a hard one to do because like, some of the movies I grew up with, you probably grew up with as well. Some of the people might not have watched them. Maybe it was, I don't know, culturally not their thing, or it just wasn't an interest. But like I grew up with like the Ghostbuster movies. I grew up with, unfortunately, like Poltergeist, Child's Play.
None of that.
Nightmare on Elm Street, those kind of things. Even though they were before my time, they were still something I grew up with. And then getting into like the lighter stuff, I would say like the Ninja Turtle in the 90s, that was awesome. Batman with Val Kilmer and who's the original again? Michael
that was on TV the other day, and it was such a trip.
Yeah, and those are great. And but I also grew up with like things like Godfather and Serpico and all those classic like Italian gangster movies, or Scarface, which isn't Italian, it's Cuban, but like those
falls in the same vein.
Yeah, those didn't, I wouldn't say shape my childhood, because I was a child. I should have been watching something like Scarface. I shouldn't be watching a guy get mutilated in the bathtub with a chainsaw. That's not what children should learn.
Yeah, he's talking about Child's Play. Get the fuck out of here, man.
Yo, Child's Play is my biggest fear. Anybody who knows who I am, anybody that knows me in my life, that movie is about it's voodoo that puts the soul of a serial killer into a doll, and that doll's name is Chucky. That doll wants to live another life, so it needs a human sacrifice. That boy, his name was Andy. I grew up terrified of this thing because it was after Andy. I still, 32 years old, have night terrors from time to time. Wake up screaming like a little girl because of it.
I don't watch any of that. I'm not scary movies.
Terrified.
I'm
not a scary movie guy either. But my brother was. He could let it just. He's a sociopath. He can let it just go over his head, no problem. I take it to heart. It's like, no, I'm there now. There's a doll named Chucky after all Andys, and I'm primary number one Andy in my life, so I know it's coming after me.
That's it. From now on, anybody in my chat at Dadbods United on Dadbods United's chat, anybody who acts like a dandy from now on will be known as an Andy. I'm messing with you. See, I grew up.
And I played.
I can't even.
Like, Alien was another one that I watched. I always watch these things with my parents, and I like the old like Exorcism was lost on me. Even the newer Exorcisms were lost on me.
Watch any of those.
Yeah, like just whatever, that kind of paranormal stuff. It's freaky, but it's not my style. I'd rather have like a jump scare out of like Alien and Predator or an Alien or whatever like that. But played Alien Isolation on stream on Mixer, and probably one of the most terrifying things I've ever done, because you play by yourself. It's not a co-op game. You don't have anyone to talk to. It's terrifying. It's really good. It's I mean, it's good if you can get through like the first chapter kind of thing where you're not pissing yourself, but I didn't make it through that. I I had to stop. My laundry bills were getting too high.
Running out of underwear.
As the bills were going, it wasn't too much.
I grew up with a lot of like a lot of the guys that I hung out with growing up were heavily into combat sports. So I did venture into the mob movies and like the Godfathers, Bronx Tale, Scarface was one, Casino, Goodfellas, Heat. Like I fell in love with a lot of those. But also grew up watching. My dad was a huge Bruce Lee guy, so watching some of the Bruce Lee stuff.
Okay.
Grew up with like Bloodsport, Commando, Rambo. Because a lot of my buddies were heavily into combat sports, I fell into a lot of those, like, Best of the Best, and because I was such a nerd, like The Wizard. But really, really dug into a lot of the fighting movies, the combat movies. Still some of my favorites. Going back, the mob movies will always hold a special place in my heart. But as they continue to evolve into combat movies, Van Damme was great. I continued to evolve into like more of the sci-fi, the thrillers, like that kind of genre. So Aliens,
Kind of like the Blade Runner type stuff. I guess that was. Were you a Blade Runner fan?
I was a bit. I was Blade Runner, but later on, like Blade Runner, Tron. I didn't get into those until I didn't really appreciate those until I was well into my my late teens, early 20s.
Speaking of cartoons, Tron, the one that they did in like 2000s, great.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing. Just because you mentioned Casino, I went and I was looking up like the swear count in it. At one point in a time in history, it was the one movie that had the most swear words, specifically the F word, of any other movie done. Looking at the count, it's still top 7. It's got 422 F words in it, which is about 2.4 fucks per minute. That's what it boils down to. There's more. Like there's I say obviously, like I knew this, but the second one is called Fuck, a documentary on the word. That one literally is like 900 and it's 93 minutes long. It's 9.21 fucks per minute. That's fast.
That's a lot.
But like, right?
But like I got into like Judge Dredd.
Yes.
The original Judge Dredd was like Stallone and stuff. Like I followed basically the actors. So like Van Damme, somebody mentioned in chat.
Yeah.
Van Damme, Stallone. Like the Rockies. Like the Rockies fell into the fight vein, but like watching like Double Team, Van Damme's attempt at Street Fighter, which was horrible. You had like Jet Li, like The One, which then evolved, like you had The Matrix, Equilibrium. For those of you that don't know Equilibrium, don't judge me.
Throw it back a little bit further than Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Johnny Mnemonic, rather.
Yeah, but then you had like the $1 Million Man, the A-Team, like all that kind of shit too.
Crazy.
Like there was some epic, like, again, I look back at what they do. Like my wife and I, like, I don't know about you, but when you sit down on the couch to not game, to watch shows and movies and stuff, I struggle to find new stuff that I want to watch that's engaging.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cover the same content or type of content in those 80s and 90s movies. Like there was just something special. American Pie. There was just something special that captured your mind and your heart in a lot of these movies.
So it's not a movie, it's a show, but The Boys on Amazon.
Yep.
On Prime Video is actually quite enthralling. It's a little slow in the first season near the end, but it definitely does like that whole cliffhanger thing, and it does it really well, and you get to see the characters grow. I think that's what makes like a good show or movie to me nowadays, is like character development.
Yep.
If I don't, and even in my video games, if I don't see character development, I'm going to be done with your game, your show, your movie. Like it's what I want to see, especially if you're going to stretch it out over time. Like the Ninja Turtles that Michael Bay did, there was no character development. They were just stale, stagnant people.
It was this assumption that you already know who they are, so whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas the one, like the live action ones back in the day, did such a good job of really getting you to fall in love with who those characters are. American Pie, all joking aside, is a phenomenal movie because it does that really well. It develops the characters incredibly well, considering the number of characters you're expected to follow around throughout the course of this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
You know, any movie that can give you sequels where there's actual character development and like it's like movie after movie, you have to remember what the last one is to remember what they are now. I would go back to like Boy Meets World. I think that's what made it so good because you basically see them go through early teen years of high school into graduation and a little bit into college. Like you see them go through all these like relationship woes and like drugs and alcohol and just stress, anxiety, and all these things. And you got to see the development and how they dealt with it and like how like Mr. Feeney was the neighbor, but he was like a friend, and I don't know, that kind of stuff was it. I think that's what maybe kept me going even as a kid, is I wanted to see what was going to happen next. How are they going to get out of this one, guys?
But you also grew up with the characters. Like you were often, like in my generation, I was basically going through it with them. You know what I mean? So you were kind of learning as you went. The movies, it was a little bit harder to capture that because you have far less time. When you're running a season of 24 episodes, let's say, you've got, now 12 hours worth of content that you can, work with. When you're running an hour and a half to 2 hour movie, it's a little bit harder unless you're going to pull the 3 hour Godfather movie or,
I mean, Harry Potter did it. They did it over, 8 movies?
Harry Potter, but they did a brilliant job and they had an incredible source material that helped them to develop that strategy, right? Like, I look back at some of the movies and it's like, there's so many movies from back then, and we haven't even touched on like the sports movies, like Any Given Sundays, the Rudies, Moneyball. Like, I think honestly something changed in the mid 2000s that managed just to kill a lot of the movie industry. Like I said, there's nights where we sit on the couch and we're like, do you want to watch? Oh, what's this new movie? Maybe it's just there's too much availability, but times like a perfect example. Last week, we sat down to watch something new. It took us 45 minutes to find something, and you want to know what we settled on? A League of Their Own.
Can't even say I've ever heard A League of Your Own. That's the baseball movie?
Yeah, the women's baseball.
The women's baseball? Yeah, okay. See, I've never seen it. Never.
Hey,
sports movies. Sports movies don't tickle me. The last sports movie I liked was probably the one that had who was she? Amanda Bynes in it.
I was like bending like.
Oh, I lied.
She's all that.
Yeah, probably she's all that, but actually, it's probably the last one I did enjoy watching sports wise was probably Ladybugs with Rodney Dangerfield.
So wait, you haven't seen like Little Giants?
No, I have.
Okay.
I enjoyed that, but it's not memorable. Like it wasn't the first thing that popped ahead.
Like Kicking and Screaming. Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell was one of like the greatest.
I'm not a Will Ferrell guy.
What was the other? Oh, The Big Green was another soccer movie by Disney. You've got games like like Any Given Sunday or Remember the Titans. Come on, Phillips, The Big Green. Oh man, The Big Green is amazing.
I can't do soccer sports films because it's always like wrong. It's America's interpretation of what soccer should be, and I disagree with it wholeheartedly. It's never good.
Oh, dude, we're gonna do some movie nights or something. Cross country movie nights.
While we're on the topic of movies, and I know you're the DC guy, what's your opinions on the newer DC stuff, like the Justice Leagues and the Batman versus Supermans, and like from the story arc of with the new stuff, the way things are in that world with Superman and Batman versus Superman? Do you have a favorite? Was Man of Steel a good movie for you?
It all hurts my heart.
Really?
Yeah, it all like. Okay, so over the last 10 years from like the Batman Begins era of Bale and what he was able to do with it was phenomenal. You fast forward over the last couple of years with the Justice Leagues and stuff like that, and you're just like, no. I think they made the mistake of trying to rush to keep up with Marvel and all the success that Marvel had with the Avengers franchises. As much as I'm a DC fanboy, like I give full props to the way Marvel decided to run their franchise and develop and create an entire universe. They put it together so intelligently, and it just worked so incredibly well. On the other hand, the one thing that Marvel did piss poor that DC blew out of the water was all their animated movies.
Yeah.
The DC animated movies over the last 10 years have been some of the best things to come out in any medium at all, at any.
DC animated movies are really great. They have great casting. There's one name that always sticks out to mind, Andrea Romano. She has been in charge of the casting for Warner Brothers for since I can remember.
Okay.
Like animated Batman animated series, I knew she was the person that put that together. Just it's the one name that always pops up that I always remember. When they did the cartoon version of Batman vs Superman,
Yeah.
that on its own, if they were going to do Oscar-winning animations in that particular genre, that field, that was a great 2-part series.
It was.
Amazing.
Did you ever watch the? It's probably about 5 years old now. Batman: The Red Hood.
Yeah, I think I've seen them all. Batman, Red Hood, Batman, The Son of Batman, Batman versus Robin,
Okay, so
all
you've
those kind of
seen
things.
all
All
the newer
those newer stuff are the animation's great. The storylines are great. The dialogues are great. There's some things that are kind of hit and miss, but I think that's what's missing from the DC franchise and the movies is they need to do that story arc from the start. Like, sure, give us a Batman, even if you're gonna make it a guy from Twilight, it's fine. Give us Batman, but they have to introduce that paranormal type stuff. It's missing. Like, they have to have Killer Croc. They have to have Clayface. They have to have these things. It has to be a part of that universe because it's such a huge part of it. The Christian Bale movies were great because of the sense of realism, but I wanted more from that. I want to see a really cool Penguin that's like Danny DeVito's Penguin, bar none, best and only there ever was, but amazing. Like, everything, no one's ever going to touch that. Just like we say that no one will ever touch the Joker. I can't even remember his name. The Joker from Christian Bale's movies. Yeah, his name's escaping me. The Englishman.
Yeah, I'm just having a complete brain fart right now too.
Heath Ledger. So a lot of people say that he's untouchable, but then you go to this last Joker iteration that has
emo Joker with
Christ, why can't I get these people's names today?
So which one are we talking? Jared Leto's Joker? Or are we talking
no. Jared Leto's Joker is exactly an absolute joke. We're talking
Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
The newest Joker, Joaquin Phoenix. Yes, thank you. That was a good Joker. He did well. I have a lot of people who told me that if you're going to watch this movie, you're going to get triggered if you have any mental instabilities or if you're depressed or anxiety ridden or whatever. But I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that at all. But it was great. It was dark. It showed you who they were. It followed DC to a T. Then
because DC's all about that character development. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It kind of gave Joker a sad story, which he does have it. If you read the comics and even in the animated series, they follow that portion. Down on his luck comedian or down on his luck. I think in the comics he was he worked for the mob and he took a job that went wrong, and that's how he ended up being the Joker.
So
but go ahead.
No, I was gonna that's the beauty of the Joker and what DC's done with that character is that nobody knows his origin story. They've been reluctant to even write his origin story. So nobody knows if that Joker movie could just be a take on the Joker's origins because nobody knows. And they've made it very clear that Joker movie with Joaquin does not tie into any Batman universe. So I know DC's done some things very well. Even with the Justice League movies and stuff like that. They had, in my opinion, moments of awesome, but could never bring the whole thing together. So it's hard. As a fanboy, I want to be oh yeah, DC's the greatest shit ever. But sometimes you just got to be real and know when you're not the best. And there's.
I think what they
that particular franchise, what they seem to have a problem with is keeping actors for any certain period of time. Batman has literally been like 16 different actors since they brought it to the big screen, and there's no consistency. I get it. You can't have Michael Keaton be Batman back in the 90s and expect him to still be Batman in 2020. Right. It's not going to work. But what they did with Marvel that seemed to work is they got the movies out over like a 15-year period. Yep. And yeah, they aged, but they're still young enough to get away with doing what they're doing. Old Batman's actually the most badass Batman I can think of. Like old crotchety Batman is just, and I'm glad Ben Affleck is actually a good Batman. I like that. He's a great Batman, but they didn't introduce him in a way that made sense. They just threw him into Batman versus Superman because they wanted to get Justice League out. But if you could give me a story arc with Ben Affleck as Batman, do it.
If they had taken Ben Affleck Batman and evolved his Batman over the next, let's say, 10 years, and then on the tail end of that, introduce the Batman Beyond storyline with some young, fresh, up-and-coming actor as the like there it is. There's your evolution. But the Hollywood fear is that people are going to get sick of the superhero movies or ideas because they've been so in your face for the last 15 years.
Yeah, they keep making them. So Tom Holland, Spider-Man, he's young. He's like 19, 20, or I mean, he's young enough to follow Spider-Man to the grave if he wanted to. If he wanted to sign off and be Spider-Man forever, he could be the face of Spider-Man forever. Yep. What DC Universe keeps doing is finding characters or actors that are too old.
Yeah.
Because Batman was what, maybe mid-20s when he kind of started doing his thing?
Yeah.
And then as it gets older to 40s. Yeah, but they're grabbing actors that are like 32 years old. They're past not their prime, but it's not something that they're going to want to do for 8 years. They're not going to want to follow that. They're going to want to do more meaningful things rather than be this cultural icon. Robert Downey Jr., he went through his past of addiction and all that kind of stuff, and he came out the other side doing Iron Man, and that is who he is. Yeah. He's still an amazing actor. He's still done really great films, but he is Iron Man, and there's no one else in this world that can be Iron Man.
And that's where they nailed their success, was the casting. You said it 100%. Like, they cast the perfect Iron Man, and then they evolved the rest of the franchises around him. And they did a brilliant job. I'm curious to see how this next phase goes with all these guys leaving, or like changing of the guard for like the changing of the guard with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, for example. Robert Downey as Iron Man. Like, oh my God, like there's so many things that could go awry right now for Marvel. But DC just hasn't.
They've already made that decision to go with a female Thor. So once Chris Hemsworth steps down, it's actually going to be Natalie Portman is supposed to be the way it goes, because the comic books have actually already made that step a couple of years ago that Thor is now a female. So they're just catching up. I mean, it's fine. It's whoever is worthy can wield the hammer, the power of Thor.
Right.
It's fine. But it's going to be interesting to see. I kind of wish that. I like that they're keeping her on, but I just don't see her as a female Thor. She's literally the same height as me.
I agree, and I think that's where I'm having problem. I don't have a problem with the fact that they're introducing the female Thor. They're following the continuity of the comic books. I just don't like her as the selection, in my opinion. But I mean, we'll see. Like, give her a chance. I said the same thing about Affleck. I thought it was a good move.
True, I didn't like him either. But you look at him and under the cape and cowl, it's like he's got Batman's chin.
He grew on.
He grew on. He's got Batman's chin. I think that's the one thing I liked about like the 90s and early 2000s kind of stuff is the way they animated their cartoons. They're always like big burly dudes. There wasn't one unfit dude except for like one or two cops.
Yeah.
That obviously weren't doing anything. They were just there for like comedic relief or something. But every single dude that had any lines whatsoever in those old cartoons, they were literally triangles from the shoulders down to their waist, and just big, fit, burly men.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly. They were like they were every stereotype come to life. Like, but that was the cool thing about like that generation. It followed into a lot of the movies, like. think of movie characters back in the day, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, Stallone,
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger. We didn't even touch on like the Terminators. Like we could do a podcast literally on just them. Like we could have done a podcast for each
Yeah.
of these genres, no problem.
That's
And
true.
we might still go back and do it if you guys enjoy it.
Yeah. This might be something I have to touch base on again, because we haven't even made it into the games that we grew up on, because some of the stuff we're talking about is the newer stuff. It's not even the retro. It's just opinions that we have on the old stuff that reminds us of the new stuff.
Yeah, like what it's evolved into. Like we've had, I think the two of us grew up in some of the greatest generations for media. Like I said, I think right now we're kind of in a transition with a lot of the social movements. And again, I'm not judging anybody for their opinions. They're rightful. This isn't meant to be controversial in any way. But we're kind of going through this like discovery period as humans on like kind of a reset of our own universe on what is and isn't socially acceptable. And I think Hollywood's taken note of that and has kind of put a pin in anything that might really tip the scales or make people uncomfortable just out of fear of reactions not being favorable. And I think that's, in my opinion, what we're seeing in like Disney rebooting a lot of old franchises in live action, not really coming out with anything new and creative. Like, I know a lot of things got put on hold for COVID, but think about the 6 months of movies before COVID. I don't remember anything that got me off my ass to be like, I want to go to the theaters and see this.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Can't remember the last movie I saw.
Because just it in my opinion feels like right now Hollywood is just kind of taking a time out and they're like, let's just put out something to appease the masses, but we're not going to step outside of what we know works. And right now what we know works are superhero movies and reboots. And it's been like, okay.
Yeah. I was
I don't know. It's
I'm
unfortunate.
not excited for the new Wonder Woman. I know they put that on hold for release.
I'm not either.
It looks awful. I think they screwed up Cheetah. Cheetah is like, she's just casting fine, but then they went and did pure CG on it.
Yeah.
Meh. Completely ruined.
Again, I think DC just doesn't go far, like lean far enough into the source material, and then lean.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep it like the more mature hero movies. Like Marvel just went right at it. Like, look, we got people from space, we got people from dimensions, we got people that are mutants, we got all these different things. It is what it is. Fucking deal with it. You're watching a cartoon come to life. DC, I think, has tried to take the more human approach, be like, this person has superpowers, but they're still kind of human. So still, like, it doesn't translate. In the books, they do an incredible job. In the live action, haven't really been able to capture.
If I'm watching a movie like Superman, I'm not watching it for believability. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't care that Superman has all these powers and he is in love with a human. I don't care that Batman has no powers and is in love with
a cat.
Amazon or a cat, yeah. Because it's just, I mean, most people watch those kind of movies as an escape of their reality anyway. That's the whole idea of between theater. But man, we could go on and on, but we have to move on. We have to move forward because like, we're going into games now. Like what we played growing up.
Why don't we save games for a future episode?
Yeah, we can.
I think games will be a much heavier topic because we'll have a lot to say about, I know, like the games we grew up on, as well as like the evolution and where we see games going. Why don't we save that for next episode? Because our next episode will be right up around the release of the PS5.
Yeah, no, that works. So we'll see what we can do with because I mean, there's games like Tomb Raider that has evolved over time. We can branch into what that looks like as games have progressed. Yeah, see what it looks like, because we know it was basically pyramid-shaped boobs that ran around a dungeon, and now it's like this. Now there's physics to it where they bounce and they're not triangular anymore. So
that has triggered enough people on its own.
I know, but you know what? As sexualized as the Tomb Raider character was, Lara Croft, these new games did not do that. At least to me, when I looked at
badass of a woman she is, even in the movies, like Lara Croft is a badass. And that's another thing we'll talk about too, is like some of the female leads that have taken on video games like Heavy Blade, Horizon Zero Dawn, like what they have done with and the evolution of females in gaming because of the strength of a Lara Croft, in my opinion, is incredible. And we're getting more and more strong female characters, and it's great to see. Like as a father raising two daughters, and I know
Absolutely.
you as well. Like it's great to see that my daughters can eventually look up to characters like that.
Yeah.
But
It'll be by the time they're old enough and watching cartoons, or not cartoons, but the movies that we kind of grew up watching. They're gonna be like, "What the hell? They did this wrong. Thor's a woman. What are you doing? Why is it this blonde-haired dude?"
I cannot wait to introduce my daughter like 80s movies and be like, appreciate what you have now. Look at the shit that we dealt with.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, you look at some of the CG and some of the animations that we were like. You look at Jurassic Park and it holds up because it's animatronics. It's not animation, so it works. The newer ones, not so much.
Yeah, I mean Jurassic Park was and still will always be one of my favorite movies of all time. Not so much the story
First
was
one.
meh.
First and second were good, and then everything after kind of shit the bed. Jurassic World kind of picked it back up a little bit.
Yeah, it brought back some of that intensity, which was lacking, I think, from the middle ones. But there were so many like you could sit and talk about the the collections of movies as you go down the list and all the amazing movies that shaped our generations in the 80s and 90s. Like, then you've got the comedies like Scott Pilgrim. What an amazing movie that was. Grandma's Boy. Superbad. Like some of those comedies, like, just brilliant, brilliant movies that like you don't find comedies like that anymore. Like that little raunchy comedy that was just raunchy enough and like to be like slightly offensive, but absolutely hilarious.
You're sitting there talking about how you're going to introduce your daughters to stuff like Superbad. I'm thinking I can't wait for my daughter to understand who's on first.
Oh my god! I still have the Abbott and Costello VHS tape.
Oh my god! I used to go on YouTube and just look up the gig, like the little gags that they would do with like 7 times 7 is 21 or some shit, or like whatever it was.
Oh my god!
Some of the things, and they do things in the most idiotic way, but how it's written is super intelligent. Like you would never have thought to do math that way. I mean, I did math that way. I did math wrong all my life. But when you see someone, you see someone make it make sense. Like it's like that's what I was thinking when I was doing that equation in school. You're right. I'm with you.
But they made you question everything. Everything about your reality was questioned in that moment. You're like, you know how many times I sat there and I looked at that math and I'm like, no, he's right. Like that's.
If there's anyone that's here live currently that hasn't seen anything to do with Abbott and Costello, go watch Who's on First. The little gag that they do with Who's on First, it's hilarious. Same for the audio listeners if you've never heard of it. I feel like most of you have if you're around our same. Another classic, which isn't exactly, it's more silent on this side, but Laurel and Hardy. I grew up with some of that shit too. It's well before my time, but it was still. I was introduced to some things that I'm so grateful to know because it's just hilarious. Wasn't a big Groucho Marx fan or his brother. I can't remember his name. He's the famous one. I can't remember his name. But Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, absolute classics. You'll get some good laughs out of how stupid it is.
Guys, hashtag PG podcast. Let us know what some of your favorite movies were growing up. Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know. I think we're at a point now, a good point to wrap on that. Like we've covered some amazing eras, but we want to know from you. Hashtag PG podcast. Let us know. Like, what did you grow up on? What are the movies now that you're excited to show your kids back? Like, I can't wait to show them X-Men. Like my daughter and like, will look at X-Men and look at what they did and some of these cartoons. Like that's why I have the DVDs. Hopefully they'll still work if they haven't, eroded or something. Mm-hmm. But like these are the movies that like and the shows that helped shape us and made us the nerdliest dads out there now. Hit us up on Twitter, PG Podcast, hashtag PG Podcast, gamers parental. Andy, let's roll them out and tell these beautiful people where they can find you.
I am Andy TTV on all platforms, Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter. My streaming schedule has changed, if not for right now, non-existent. Trying to work on getting some YouTube content out and about. I don't have a link that you can actually get for that because it's too long and lots of jarbles. But yeah, keep in touch and see what we're up to going forward.
Awesome. I am Dadbods United. You are here on if you're live with us, joining us here at Dadbods United. Well, let's see, twitch.tv/Dadbods United. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, www.dadbodsunited.com. You'll find all the things United about Dadbods. I stream generally about 4 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 8:30 Eastern until whenever my eyes close. Usually not on stream, which is a good thing. We have a lot of fun, play a lot of sports games. You can find me on Twitter where I do most of my social activities, DadbodsUNTD. But yeah, feel free to hit us up. Let us know what your thoughts are on some of the stuff we've talked about today. I love talking about this stuff, and I hope we do more episodes like this.
It's just so much. Like, we could take a list of the shows and go from A to Z, and you can tell we're Canadians because I said Z. And we could just talk about each and every single one and skip out the ones that we didn't. Like, it's I'm looking at a list right now and it's crazy. Like Sylvester and Tweety's Mysteries, just like so much. I didn't even touch on the one I wanted to say that I put in a tweet was Tiny Toon Adventures.
Oh,
I watched the shit out of that.
We didn't touch on Tiny Toons. We didn't touch on Looney Tunes. We didn't touch on Roadrunner. Like,
dude, Tiny Toon Adventures had a great video game for the Nintendo NES. Amazing game, hard as shit, but so much fun. But again, we'll go into that, I guess, on the next episode, which would mean that our next episode, we're doing this every 3 weeks. We do this November 23rd is the next time, or sorry, November 13th is the next time that we're going to get together, just after Remembrance Day. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we already have our topics. We're going to talk about games that we grew up playing, and all things that means to. Don't forget that you can find us on @GamersParental on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes as well. This podcast is the live recording of the podcast every third Friday, and then Monday by 6 a.m. Pacific time, it is available on most podcasting services for you to listen to on your way to work. So make sure that you search us up, Parental Gamers Podcast, on all those platforms. You see our logo just right. Am I pointing the right way?
Yeah, you got it. You're on.
So keep an eye out for that one, and that's where we're at.
Oh my god, so many shows now are starting to flood back. Like somebody's
I know
chats like
not enough time.
I'm thinking like Darkwing Duck and
oh, tell me about it. DuckTales, Tom and Jerry. Like, I grew up on all of this stuff, and it's all on Disney Plus. We can't.
We can go
wrap
to
us up.
hours. No, we're done. We're out. This is the outro.
Take us home.
All right.
Take us home.
Look, I appreciate everybody who's been here live on Twitch, hanging out with us, throwing us suggestions, hitting us up with details. Everybody who's listening, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or any of the platforms, we are grateful. Hit us with that follow button. Please come back and see us again. We are your parental gamers. I am Andy TTV. I am Dadbods United. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and we will speak to you all in about 3 weeks. Hit us up. #PG Podcast on Twitch. Let us know what some of your favorites were, some of your upcoming favorite games are. We appreciate you all for being here. Thank you, and good night.